So I would love to take you guys flying again on the channel. However, Mother Nature has continually decided to continue to dump snow upon the great state of Michigan, and dying in icing conditions in a Cessna is not on my list of things to do this year. However, I have opted for a story time with some of my past flight footage, more specifically, the very first flight that I had solo in over 2 years. Now, you guys know that I like to use little aviation philosophies to teach you guys something. I've used continually every day airplanes take off against the wind in an effort to inspire you. Today, I want to talk about how not continuing a failed approach and going around has a lot to do with also being a creator. Let's talk. What's good, everybody? For those of you guys who are new to my channel, my name is Sydney Baker Green. I'm an international wedding photographer, and I'm also a cinematographer and colorist. And today, again, we are going to be talking about a little aviation idiom, but with also a story time. I have some awesome footage from my very first flight that was actually going to turn into a YouTube video. However, the audio just wasn't quite there. It was my first time recording my flight, so on and so forth, but we're going to be talking. So what happened on my very first solo flight in over 2 years? Well, simply put, it was a windy day. And one of the things that we have to kind of understand about little tiny airplanes is that they're generally not friends with the wind with respect to crosswinds. And my little home airport here in Michigan at Holland Airport, or West Michigan Regional Airport, KBIV to be more specific, has an east-west runway. Generally, because the assumption is that there's going to be either a land breeze or a sea breeze, the wind coming over the lake and coming onto the land, or the wind coming from the land and going over the lake. And this is simply because of the heating and the cooling of surfaces. Water tends to cool slower and warm slower than land. So you get those breeze differences, those pressure differentials. Outside of the physics behind it, this day was a northwest wind. The crosswind component of our Cessna is around 15 knots, but our crosswind component that day was 13 knots. Now, the weatherman told me that, simply put, it was going to get lighter, and it did end up slowing down finally on my landing approaches. But as I had taken off, right, I noticed immediately once the wheels left the ground that this wind was strong, and perhaps I had bitten off a little bit more than I could chew. Now, I called my flight instructor, my previous flight instructor, back in 2018 about this later, and she said this was a healthy crosswind component, to say the least. But one of the things that Riddle trained me really well on was the art of a go-around. And I guess that's kind of, once my wheels left the ground, that was always in the back of my mind, right? Like, I'd left, basically gotten into this plane to make a video for you guys. It just so happened that I didn't end up using that footage because the audio was bad. But the whole reason I got in this plane was to make a video for you guys and to introduce you into my life of aviation. And while here, I had this nagging thought in the back of my mind: how are you going to get this airplane onto the ground? And that was the biggest concern of mine at the time. But Riddle always trained us: when the approach is not safe, go around, right? Give yourself an out. So how many times did it take me to get on the ground? I had 3 missed approaches that day. Not because anyone else told me not to continue and try to force the plane on the ground, but because I determined that in that moment, it simply was not worth continuing the approach to the ground. The first time, my altitude was off and I was getting blown left and right. I was trying to use my old method of just crabbing all the way down and then kicking the aircraft at the last minute. But I hadn't flown in a while, so coming back around the second time, I'm like, I'm gonna keep my wind correction in. And each and every time at 200 feet, it was the call out. 200 feet, unstabilized, going around. Each and every one of those 3 times. The 3rd time specifically because there was a private jet looking at me and I was not about to look like a fool, bouncing and seating all over this runway too. So yeah, that was a little bit of a factor, but I also knew that it wasn't safe. And had I got closer to the ground, I still could have given myself that out. The point is coming for you creators. Now, around this 3rd time, right? I had a little bit more of an incentive to get on the ground. Because as I was on my downwind leg for the runway, I noticed that this private jet was taking off. And the last thing that I needed in this wind, which is already turbulent, is to get caught in the wake of a jet as well. So I'm looking for their takeoff point, their point of rotation where their wheels leave the ground and I know they're going to start generating those vortices when I know I need to be on the ground before then. And it was a decent bit down the runway. And thankfully, it was at this moment when the wind finally calmed down enough where I maintained a stabilized approach, called out 200 feet stabilized, continuing, and put the aircraft on the ground. What does this have to do with living to see another day as a pilot? Well, one, we give ourselves outs, right? We don't have to continue on a dangerous approach if we feel like it's not stable. If what we had planned isn't going exactly quite right, give yourself another chance to do it again. But what does this have to do with living to see another day as a creator? Oftentimes when we start our creative journeys, we have these ideas of how this journey is supposed to look. And for some reason, because our lives are not directly on the line as they are with being in an airplane, we feel like there isn't necessarily an out. We want to continue on something that perhaps is broken. Maybe it's our content model. Maybe it's our style, whether it's our photographic style or our editing style. Maybe it's our coloring style. Maybe it's the camera we're using. Maybe it's our comfort zone. Maybe we're tired of producing the same content all the time, or maybe we're just tired of showing up every day. Just like in an airplane, when our approach is unstable, and we are determining, and we can see it, that this just ain't working out, Chief. This ain't it, Chief. So too in our creative lives, can we choose to do a go-around? Set something up differently, try a little bit of a more refined or even a different technique to get back on the ground and accomplish our mission, which is to see another day. And had I continued on one of those unstable approaches, I might not be here to talk to you guys today. Don't be a hero and save a bad landing. If you guys like this video, be sure to give me a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications. If you have not, be sure to follow me on my social media. The link is in the description down below, as well as the YouTube fam. Their link is also in the description down below. My beautiful people, if you guys are ever feeling uninspired, uncreative, or just want to give up on life, remember, every day, airplanes take off against the wind. Keep climbing, stay inspired, and as always, stay fabulous. My name is Sydney, and I will see you beautiful people next time. Peace out.